before 2, so I'll stop for a second.
Go. We're good.
Okay. Good evening. It is Monday, May 1st, 2023. The time is 6:32. The City Council of Woodland does have a quorum present with 4 council members for an executive session. We'll be going into executive session for RCW 42.30.110, Section I, potential litigation. We will be in executive session until 6:59.
Should we close that back door?
Yes.
Yeah.
Again. Oh, we're doing it here?
Yeah. for now,
Recording
we're gonna do it
stopped.
here.
Oh,
Until,
We're gonna
till they're done and then
we're gonna
we're.
pop in the room.
Oh, are
Yeah,
you?
we're just cutting them off.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. We're
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
I'll just say, it's 6:49, we're out of executive session. Pause this thing here.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
Look at you. Look at you. That's why you get the subject matter expert. All right. Good evening, everybody. It is May 1st, 2023 at 7 p.m. This is a regular meeting for the City Council of Woodland. If I could please have you ensure that your cell phones are silenced and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Ms. Hogan, please take the roll tonight.
Councilmember Burke.
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Holland.
Present.
Councilmember Dowdy.
Here.
Councilmember Hall.
Here.
Councilmember Alderman.
Here.
All right, everyone is here and accounted for. Thank you, Chief. This evening we have a proclamation, and it is for the Day of Prayer, May 2023. Whereas throughout history, Americans have lifted up fervent prayers to God on behalf of our nation. From the first gathering of our founding fathers, elected officials have prayed and entreated those they serve and represent to join them in prayer, including the authors of our Declaration of Independence, wrote that they, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress, assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world, and carried on to present day in presidential proclamations, such as last year's invitation to join him in asking for God's continued guidance, mercy, and protection. And whereas a National Day of Prayer has not only been a part of our heritage since it was declared by the First Continental Congress in 1775, but it is a public law established in the United States Congress in 1952, approved by a joint resolution and amended by Congress and President Reagan with Public Law 100-307 in 1988, affirming that it is essential for us as a nation to pray and directing the President of the United States to set aside and proclaim the first Thursday of May annually as a National Day of Prayer. And whereas in our state and across America, I can never say this word, I'm really not. Observance, there's always a few words I can't get. Observance of the National Day of Prayer will be held on Thursday, May 4th, 2023, with the theme, Pray Fervently in Righteousness and Avail Much, based on the verses in James 5:16b. The effective, fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much. And whereas every first Thursday of May on the National Day of Prayer, we not only express our faith and exercise our freedom in prayer, but unite our hearts and voices in personal prayer and public gatherings throughout our city and across our America with fervent praise, repentance, love, and humble intercession for our neighbor and nation. Holding fast to the promise throughout the Holy Scriptures that the Lord hears and avails much as he answers the faith-filled prayers of his people. Now, therefore, I, William A. Finn, Mayor for the City of Woodland, do hereby proclaim May 4th, 2023 as a day of prayer throughout the City of Woodland, and I commend this observance to all our citizens. Thank you very much. And Mr. Hall.
Yes, thank you, Your
I
Honor.
will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Everyone is invited to this. We have pastors and ministry leaders from all over the community who will be leading that day of prayer. We're going to meet at high noon at Horseshoe Lake Park, and we will last through most of the lunch hour, maybe not quite, but everyone's invited to come. Bring a lawn chair if you can't stand that long, and probably an umbrella according to the weather report. I think everybody's on board with this all across the community except maybe the Lord. He's still holding out for a thunderstorm. But anyway, we've got good broad-based support for it all across the community. We've got congregations from everywhere coming, a couple of Hispanic congregations, so it's going to be really an all-community event, and everybody's welcome. So set it aside, May 4th, this Thursday at high noon at the park. So we'll see you there.
Thank you, sir. And what I love about this agenda is that I would say everyone in town is participating. Every religious organization that we have is participating.
And some ministry leaders, and the school will have a representative praying for children. So it's a good broad-based community effort.
Thank you.
And thank you, Your Honor, for being the one to kick it off on Thursday.
You bet.
He'll be doing the welcome.
Thank you. And I hope, I'm gonna try and say this, observation, I can't even say it. Observance, gosh, I just can't, there's another word during the budget process that I can't say either, and it escapes me right now. It has to do with property. I can't remember what it is anyway. I usually have a couple of words I can't, but thank you so much for helping organize this and for the invite, and I will see you there Thursday. All right. Moving on to citizen communication for items not on the agenda. The farmer's market. Good evening.
Mayor, Finn, council members. I just wanted to come down here and apologize, first of all, for us not having all of our application stuff in yet. We were fine tuning the locations that we were wanting to be at the park. And we need to get together with Tracy and see if we can get moved so that we will have access to one of the power boxes at the distant end, so.
Perfect.
And then I also wanted to ask if it was possible at some point this season to get a more permanent location that we can put up a sign, like on the back of one of the other signs that's at the skate park.
Oh,
The back
okay.
side of that sign that faces the freeway,
Gotcha.
just because there's nothing on it, and then we would be able to, farmer's market here, and then just leave it up so that we could get a little bit more traffic.
Okay. All right, absolutely. Yeah,
That's-
we can roundtable that and figure out the best route for that.
Great,
Okay.
all right, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out. Mr. Belial,
Good evening.
good evening.
First, Planners Days. That'll be in about 6 weeks, June 15th through the 18th. A quick rundown on the events. Thursday, we'll have a kids parade and a pet parade. We still need a organization to run the pet parade to benefit from the pet parade, like taking a little registration fee or whatever. And that could be the Boy Scouts or the Little League or anybody. But in order to do that, we need an organization to actually run the event. And they
To
can,
actually run it on the day of?
yeah,
Is that on Thursday or is
It's
that?
Thursday.
That's the first Thursday, right? It like
Right.
kicks off the whole thing.
yes. And it's like 5-ish, I think.
That one doesn't, is the road already, has the permit for the road and everything already been taken care of? They literally just have to organize and say go? What's the role and responsibility for the nonprofit?
They just have to put together, or I can help them put together a registration form.
Okay.
So they can collect a fee and benefit from it.
Okay,
And then we can actually have it.
okay, got it.
It's the bodies to run these things is
Gotcha.
kind of what we've run across. As well as on Saturday for our beer garden, I'm looking for a couple of volunteers to help.
To drink the beer or to,
Well-
I have clarification, Mr.
To
Belial.
kind of manage the beer garden.
I was gonna ask you to join me, but never mind.
To manage the beer garden. We're planning on having it for a longer period during the day. And I'm going to have to be there a good part of the day to run it. But again, we're short of bodies to help.
Are you looking for the monitors that are supposed to be
Monitors.
inside the tent? Okay.
Yeah, people to pick up the trash off the ground or whatever.
Gotcha.
3 or 4 people probably be enough for the day because I'm going to be
What's the timeline?
it's going to be 2 to 10.
Is that a nonprofit situation as well?
Yeah, we are the nonprofit.
You are the
Planner
nonprofit that time.
Spaces.
Okay. Okay.
Friday, you said?
Saturday is the beer garden. So a quick rundown: coronation, fireworks on Thursday, kids parade and pet parade. Friday, I think the carnival starts. Carnival starts Thursday also. Kids carnival on Friday. I'm going to have a music recital and bingo at the middle school commons, run by the Historical Museum Society. Saturday we'll have the parade, music, beer garden. Also the cruise in that night. Sunday we'll have a car show and our raffle for $5,000, as well as many other prizes. We're also looking for more prizes and other sponsors that want to get involved, get your name out there. This next weekend, the princesses and some of the other board members are going to the beach for loyalty days.
Oh,
The princesses will be selling tickets there. Also wanted to give a plug for community members to please join organizations like the Chamber, Rotary, Museum, VFW, Grange, Friends of the Library, that kind of thing. Because all those organizations want to do things, but but if they don't have bodies to do them, they can't do them. Of course, Planners Days is looking for more volunteers. And lastly, on organizing neighborhoods, the North Fork Neighborhood Association at their last meeting had some people in attendance that were interested in what they could do to get one started down here on this side. And I let them know that I've been interested in that for quite a while. They're going to share my information. So if anybody else is interested in helping getting those kind of things started down here, neighbors organizing, not a homeowners association, but a neighborhood association, and eventually those neighborhood associations working together to help Woodland be a greater place.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Is there gonna be a beer contest? I think I already asked you.
I don't think it's happening.
It's not happening this time, okay.
The people involved,
So you better start growing one.
Well, I think we talked about this. I was just so impressed with the gentleman with the, I don't even know what kind of,
they're out there. Yeah, big handlebar mustache.
yeah,
But
and it was out here.
it was
It was impressive.
all those things, we can put all those kind of things in Planners Days as long as people want to run them. Like last year it was Laluska and the haircutting place, and
Yeah, okay.
thank you very much.
All right,
Appreciate it.
thank you, Mr. Blair. Anyone else in the gallery for items not on the agenda?
One last thing, we are having a raffle, and there are raffle tickets available, you need to look on our Facebook page.
Okay, thank you.
Does she have any letters? Does she have any raffle tickets out there?
Do you have raffle tickets now?
You should never go anywhere without them.
Okay. We expect to see you on the 15th, I guess. Okay. That was our next regular meeting. Anyone else for items not on the agenda in the gallery? Anyone for items not on the agenda online? Mrs. Rett?
I have a comment. Yes. Are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I came a few weeks ago and I tried corresponding with Minol. I sent you a follow-up email on the recycling and credits issues for utility count ending in 3749. And I was wondering what the update is on that.
They are currently, I just received an email this afternoon that they are still researching the additional documentation that you provided and the additional email that was sent, I believe it was Friday.
Who is they?
Public Works, and they will be gathering that information and getting it to me for response.
Okay, because I provided all the documentation that you asked for, as well as the city should already have all that on file from before, because they gave me redacted copies of it.
I understand, and that was 20-some pages that they're still going through to ensure that it was the same documentation. And I've also asked that they research those credits that you were looking for, that you have not yet received.
Do you have an estimated date of when that will occur, since we've been waiting now for months?
Well, I will say, just because there are folks listening, I did give a response, and we did do the research, and I asked for further documentation, which you provided, which is going to take us some time to go through. Again, it was 20 plus pages. But a timeline as to answer your email from Friday, Ms. Coleman.
As most people are aware, Minol system was down as of the 12th or the 13th of this last month until today. So we couldn't have access to any documentation to research. It just came up today. We also are working with waste management because the question at hand is recycling and garbage, and we believe that information that was received from waste management may be incorrect. So we've asked them to verify that, and they said they would get back to us, and they haven't gotten back to us yet. I followed up today, and they said they'd get back to us by tomorrow, but we still have the documentation to go through. I believe that the majority of the documentation that was submitted to council was duplicate documentation that we had already commented on, but we want to go through it just to make sure, with a fine tooth and comb, to make sure we haven't missed anything.
Okay.
So to give an answer of a timeline, I would say it's going to be probably 2 weeks, since everything just came back up with Minol, so we can research some documentation there. And we also are waiting on third parties to get back to us, waste management, before we can answer some of those questions.
Okay. Did you hear all that, Ms. Rep?
I did. I'm a little surprised that Waste Management needs to be involved again, since we took pictures, you took pictures, they took pictures, and nothing has changed. I'm also a little surprised that you provided information. I provided the same information, just not redacted. And I don't think Minol's system has anything to do with it, because all the documents are already in your possession, because you provided those like they were public records requests. But we'll wait 2 more weeks and we'll check back.
Thank you. Anyone else online for items not on the agenda?
Yep,
Mr.
I would
Dyer?
like to speak. Mr. Deinhardt here. So what do we know about the Minol outage that took place? Do we know what the cause is, and do we know what the issues are?
That was something that was discussed at the last regular meeting, and I don't know if any further documentation or information had been provided to us. I'm getting a head nod. There was no further information provided except that they had a system malfunction, is the best that they could explain it. And the reason it took so long to come back online is they were going through each system individually to get it back up online to ensure that it was working properly. But
So
they did
I
not
reached
give-
out to,
They didn't give any indication as to why it failed.
yeah, I reached out to 2 other municipalities that use them for their third-party billing. That's not really the message that I got from them. And so I just didn't know, as citizens, if we should be concerned, or if there really is, a public notification or something that we could see on that.
We can certainly ask.
I will be clear, I did not hear there was a data breach. I heard that it was a cyber attack from 2 different municipalities. So to me, I'm just sitting here going, are we being misled from a community or not? I
Well,
mean,
if you are being misled,
so-
then the contract holder as well is being misled, because that was not stated to us when pressed multiple times. They indicated that they were unaware of why it went down.
got it. So I would just like that kind of raised. I mean, like I said, no one told me that it was a data breach, so I'm not worried about my data. It's just more of the cyber piece. So
Okay.
that's all I got.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Deinhardt. And I don't see anyone else online. Anyone else for items not on the agenda? All right. Moving on to items on the agenda. Anyone in the gallery for items on the agenda? We have one taker. Come on forward. Perfect timing.
Yes, Donna Butler. So I'd like to address workshop item J, the climate resilience workshop. So as with the housing action plan presented to you earlier this year, the climate resilience goals and policies being presented to you tonight is a similar situation. You have the authority to approve with conditions, or deny the application. You also have the authority to table it for further review, since this is rather lengthy. First, I want to comment on the conflict or contradiction I see in the city policies and the current city projects. For example, climate resilience is concerned with tree canopy and airflow, yet building projects of 3-story apartment complexes that are being built in critical airflow areas and will require cutting down old growth trees. So what policy gets the priority? There's a lot of unnecessary policy in this document, a lot of duplication. And most of this is already being addressed by citizens with common sense and by the market about what kind of products are available. I'm sorry, I'm out of breath here. I didn't want to miss my opportunity.
That's okay.
Okay, so this document could be cut to 1/4 of what it is. Why add so many pages of redundant regulation to our city policies? Land use is just way too much regulation. Just skip down to item 17. Protect businesses, travel, and shipping routes with increased infrastructure resilience. And item 42, encourage rainwater collection and recycling. Those are a couple of the things. I'm not going to take more time, but there's like 11 sectors, and I went through there and read those and thought, you know what, these, like I said, a lot of these are already being addressed. So there's a lot of policies. I spent some time on the city website, and that was great. There's a lot of information there. But anyway, that kind of covers it. I won't go into more of them, but there were things that were just like, no, we don't need this at all. And there are good ideas here. Also, it mentioned that these things can be addressed when we're going over the comp plan. It mentions that, that some of these things might be put into the comp plan, or maybe none. But anyway, I think that rather than just rubber stamping something that's brought to you, that there's some important things to consider.
Don't step away, because I have comments.
Okay, great.
When you're done, though.
I'm done. Go ahead.
Okay. So we learned a lot from the housing action plan that was brought forward, and so we're kind of changing things up on how we bring information back to council. And Mr. Goddard's going to go over that during the workshop tonight, because tonight is just the workshop is very simple. We're not really getting into the meat and potatoes of it. It's just the plan moving forward. But I won't steal his thunder. But because we recognize that giving it through a fire hose is not probably the best route. So we will be taking it in pieces over the next few months and bringing little bits at a time. And moving forward with these plans, we plan on doing that with everything, not just this one, but we've learned I've learned the error of my ways to bring it forward for further discussion and further outreach. So, so you don't have to say that once and expect council to remember that in 2 months, that section 42 was not, you did not like it.
No, I think I did like 42 and I did like 17.
Okay.
So out of all these 50, there were 2 on there that I thought like, let's do that.
Okay. So your comments won't be falling or trying to be remembered in 3 months. So thank you for your comments, but I just wanted to share that with you.
All right.
I learned my lesson.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? And then I saw another hand. Yes. Mrs. Johnson.
Mr. Finn.
Yeah, well, I feel like I just got in trouble. No, when Mrs. Johnson calls you. Yes, go ahead.
Well, I'm here to talk about the letter you're talking about writing on House Bill 471. First off, there is, and that's that the federal government is looking at allowing larger combinations. There are larger combinations allowed by states, like I think it was the Rocky? Montana has actually 48-foot doubles. And the thing about it is that most people don't understand is that when you have longer combinations, you have more axles. So the actual wear and tear on the road is less. This is a proven thing. If you want to look onto how you pay ton mile in Oregon, the cheapest combination is when you haul 105.5. So it doesn't hurt. It's actually better on the roads to have the bigger combination because the weight is different. But the other thing is, I don't think you need to ride on this, and it'll make an area where you could be, well, first, our roads, especially the roundabout, which all of you know how much I love the roundabout. You know, well, this is proof that I was right.
Darlene Johnson's exit 22.
Yes, no, the roundabouts haven't been made to handle that, but they can be fixed. I mean, they can be changed. And for Woodland to go on record of not wanting this could make you, well, I think I don't know whether it'll pass or not, but you don't want to be excluded from it because it'll make you non-competitive. And if you look at who is some of the main people that are against it, the railroads, they've been against trucks hauling freight the entire time Jim and I have been in business. They have been behind, and you know, they pay at that time probably 5% tax, whereas the trucking industry pays 39% tax, and that was 30 years ago, so it's worse now. But, and the Teamster Union, which has to do with, you know, hauling less freight so you have more drivers. But if you want to be competitive in the world, you got to be able to have trucks come and deliver, and you got to have the trucks that are serving the entire state. So I don't know why you would take a position on showing that Woodland is not wanting to have the larger combination. Granted, some of our roads haven't been made to accommodate them. The trucks aren't gonna come here if they can't get in, but if it's enough, if there is enough energy where the whole state is doing it, we could actually fix the roads at a lesser cost than keeping businesses out. I've talked to one entity that is looking at maybe a distribution center. You think a distribution center actually pays good wages. It's clean industry, it's good. You think they're gonna wanna come to an area that is detrimental to the larger trucks? No way, no how. And, in fact, when they put in the roundabouts, there was, I think it was Home Depot, there was 2 businesses that decided not to come as a distribution because of the roundabouts. So, I just hope that you don't send that letter. I don't think it's one that you really need to be involved in.
Thank you, Mrs. Johnson.
Any?
Yeah, oh, you got something else?
No.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Except I'm gonna go home.
Anyone else for items on the agenda in the gallery tonight? Anyone online for items on the agenda? See none. And we've come to the agenda itself this evening.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second?
Moved by Councilmember Smith, seconded by Councilmember Dowdy. Mrs. Hogan.
Councilmember Alderman.
Aye.
Councilmember Hall.
Aye.
Councilmember Dowdy.
Aye.
Councilmember Holland.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds.
Aye.
Councilmember Burke.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Moving on to reports, we don't have a public hearing this evening. Reports of City Council. Mrs. Rounds.
I went to the Love Street Playhouse on Friday evening. It was very entertaining, a nice show that they put on. And then Saturday evening, I went to the library function, and that was a nice event also.
Thank you.
Nice to support them.
I also went to the library Saturday, and it was fun.
It was a good time. It
I
was a
saw
good time.
Mr. Smith there too. And Mr. Hall.
And Mr. Hall.
Yes,
Mr. Hall, go ahead.
And I would say the meal was outstanding.
It was good.
Yeah, both those events were really, really good. It was a really fun weekend in Woodland.
It was, and the weather held up for it, so that was nice. Anyone else for reports of City Council? All right, moving on to Public Safety Committee. Public Safety Committee? You're public.
Oh, public safety.
That would be you, Mr.
Yeah,
Burke.
it is me. I'm used to public work. Okay, I did have a public safety meeting, and I'm gonna pass it to the chief, pass on what we did.
Okay, so we met, we called to order at 6 o'clock, and Chief Peeler showed up for Clark Callett's Fire and Rescue and gave a little bit of education on what the department looks like for himself. The chief introduced himself and educated the Public Safety Committee on how the department is structured. He also informed the Public Safety Committee that the department has hired 22 new employees and are looking to fill 6 more positions. They discussed ambulance services, and they're looking closely at the contract with AMR and potentially getting into the medical services themselves. So that looks like something that's gonna happen in the future. Chief Peeler also said that the department and the City of Woodland are working closely on a resolution for transferring assets with the City of Woodland. So I think they're working with Mr. Boyce on that right now.
Yes.
And then I gave a brief update on our department. So your police department is still has 1 opening for an officer. We have 2 student officers that are in field training right now and doing really well. And are progressing as expected. 1 applicant has been given a conditional offer of employment, and with successful completion of the physical or psychological exam and the physical exam, the applicant will be hired soon. There was no old business discussed, and we adjourned at 6:25, and the next meeting is June 5th, at 6 o'clock.
All right, thank you, Chief. Questions for Chief? Thank you, sir. And Public Works? Who's the chair of Public Works?
That's me, I
Mrs.
guess.
Holland.
So we met at 6 o'clock. We didn't get to go through it. Public Works is really big.
That was my fault. I rushed you, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So anyway, so some of the highlights, they did for water. They did some testing at the end of last month, on making the water taste better. So I know some people who want their water to taste like water, I guess. So we're waiting for those studies to come back. Cross Connection Program, the 2023 annual backflow summary report has been sent off to the state. Some water leaks due to setters and pipe failure. There were 3 service line failures and 2 bad setters that they replaced. They replaced 4 bad water meters since last month. They contacted 20 folks that had really high water readings in April to be proactive, so people didn't get sticker shock when they got their bill. They wanted to let them know ahead of time so they could look into what the problem was. Sewer, that one's been fun. This is fun. They vac out fats, oils, grease, and grit. Doesn't that sound fun?
I got a lesson today on what exactly is grease, so
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, so that's lift stations. That affects the lift stations. And they also found out that lift station 6, there was something wrong with it, had to be replaced. Lift station 3, they're working with Tapani to do an emergency repair on. Let's see, completed sewer main repair on Millard. They had a concrete pipe with a hole in it that needed fixed. Wastewater treatment plant, they're still waiting on some parts for the logic controllers so they can fix that. Eventually, parts and stuff should be back into normal production and delivery, you'd think, now that COVID's over. For streets, they are working on the transportation improvement plan. This is due each June, so they are working fervently on that. The jail crew is supposed to be coming on Wednesdays. They were only able to show up twice in April, but they're the folks who help our city clean up litter and encampments and spread bark and do stuff like that. You'll see our public works folks out mowing and spraying the right-of-ways. Over at the public workshop, they have ground the diseased trees down over by Lakeshore. People were kind of freaking out over the tree removal. They were diseased and needed to go. The new gazebo down at the lake has a new metal roof. And somebody vandalized the Sharps container in the bathrooms at Horseshoe, so stop breaking into stuff in the bathroom. And the kitchen down there, the kitchen shelter, needs a new roof because it's leaking. Take a guess how much that is.
8,000.
50K.
Oh, seriously?
50K.
I was gonna say 15.
50,000.
How many bits did we have on that one? 2. Okay. And that was the low bit.
And downtown, you'll start noticing flower baskets will be going up pretty soon. And that's about as far as we got, but we did go over at the head of our meeting, action items C, E, F, H, and I. All had a due pass recommendation. And then we were bum rushed out of our meeting at 6:30 so we could go into an executive session. Yes. Oh, and if you know anybody who needs a summer job, like if you have kids coming home for the summer, from college or some new graduates, they need parks help. So look on the city website, there's an application process. So be a good opportunity to help the city and make some money for the summer.
Ms. Coleman?
Yes, I just wanted to comment again on our summer help that you have to be 18 years of age, and we have no applicants. We have one, but we believe that they've taken another job already. So we're pretty flexible, which we have to be because nobody applies. So we go out and we recruit for people that we know, say you need to apply, have your parent make you apply. And so that's what we did last year. But I also want to say that we have an entry-level position in our street crew. So if you know anybody who's looking for a permanent job, we also have an opening there. So it's all posted on our website. It was posted in the Reflector. It's in there on Wednesdays. I think the summer job applications end next week, and then our permanent position is out there for a couple more weeks in the Reflector. And again, it is on our city website. So we encourage you, if you know anybody or recommend anybody, to please apply.
Thank you. And could you just briefly tell everyone what you did last year with the summer help? Because nobody was able to commit to an entire summer, just so people understand. Please apply, because we will work with you.
Right. So last year we have, most of the time when we hire for the summer, it's usually you're trying to help out kids in the community who are going to college or want to get their foot in the door to learn some new trade so they can maybe apply for a job when it's open, like they want an entry-level job. So we didn't have any applicants, so we went out and we recruited people, and they said, well, I don't want to apply because I can only work for 5 weeks. And we're like, we don't care. We had 100th day celebration for Planters Day last year, so we had 2 kids. We actually had 3 kids that said, okay, we can only work for 5 weeks, and it was through the weekend before Planters Day. We said, great, we'll take you. So we hired them, and then one didn't even show up and said, well, at the last minute they said, we don't want the job. And we're like, okay. So we had 2 kids that we hired for 5 weeks. And then a couple other kids said, well, I can't come before Planters Day, but I can work after that because I have some other scheduled events. And we're like, okay, great. So then we hired 2 more people for the next 5 weeks. And then we had one guy that said, I can work all summer. And so we had one guy that kind of worked for 4 months, and we had 2 kids that worked for 5 weeks and another couple kids that worked for 6 weeks. And so we fit them in the best way that we can, because we know that they have commitments. We know that they're going to college. And some of them that want to apply aren't 18, so we can't accept those applications. But we'll work with them because the goal is to get them trained and give them a job to earn some money and clean up our city, because they do the little minuscule tasks that we have. We'll call it that way. Lawn mowing, picking up garbage, weed whacking, things that no kid really wants to do, but yeah, we make them do it. So it is a great opportunity, and like I said, one of the guys that we hired for the summer, we hired him on full time, and he's doing a great job. So that's what we hope, that we get somebody in there that just wants to get their foot in the door. It's kind of a cruddy job, but if you do a good job, then it turns into bigger and better things later on. And it always looks good on a kid's resume to say, yeah, I worked at a municipality for that experience. So,
Mr. Smith?
You said 5 weeks. Does that include if they only could do like maybe 2 or 3 days a week if they had other obligations?
I have no applications right now. I will work with anybody if we get an application. So
We need the help.
there's always garbage, there's always graffiti, there's always something. So if I get one application, I got a kid that can work 3 days a week, we're gonna have to work with that. So we do what we can. So I encourage everybody to apply, and I try to fit I hired everybody who applied last year. And as I've told you before, one of them was my son because I forced him to. So he's not going to do it this year, but I'm just letting you know. We needed help last year because it was the 100th day anniversary for Planters Day, and I had nobody. So yeah, so I encourage anybody, if you know somebody, apply.
Can you email a link to all of us, and then we could post it on our social media page? And
absolutely.
Maybe try to spur.
It's on our website. Yep, but I can do that for sure.
But that is not unique to just our city. Like in my real life, I work with other municipalities in different aspects, and one is hiring 22 parks people, and last year they couldn't get anyone to apply. 22 positions.
Yeah, we're just hiring 3 or 4.
Right.
What's the starting pay on that?
I think it's advertised at 17 something an hour, so it's a couple bucks over minimum wage.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Coleman. Moving on to reports of advisory committees. I don't believe, downtown. Dito, go ahead.
I'd like to make one more comment. It's not just college kids. We do hire retirees, and we had a retiree that retired the city and came back and
every
worked
summer
for us
how many
for
times? 5
summers.
Yeah.
And so, if anybody's retired and wants to apply,
Yeah.
I encourage you. Now, I'm going to say you have to be able to, hold a weed whacker. So I'm going to hold you the same standard as I do an 18-year-old. But it's really not that hard because think of an 18-year-old nowadays. So anyway, so you'll be able to run circles around him because I can. So so I encourage everybody to apply.
You're getting
You
three
don't have to be
18-year-olds in
young.
one.
Yeah.
You're getting three 18-year-olds in one.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, mentally for sure.
I think the comment from the guy was that retired people know how to show up. Thank
Well,
you.
yeah,
Yes.
they do. And actually, I will say the summer help that we've had, the teenagers that have gone to college, they do show up. Take a little bit of motivating sometimes, but they have done a great job. I will say they did a great job.
Thank you. And thank you for clarifying that, not just college students or high schoolers. So, do you have anything for DWR?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. AWC and legislative, there is a Association of Washington Cities conference coming up. I will get some information out to you. It's going to be in Spokane, June 20th to the 23rd. I don't know what the agenda looks like yet, but I'll send that to you if you're interested in going and get that over to you. And then also, ledge session ended. So it ended, I want to say it was last Sunday, wrapped up. So there were some shenanigans up in Olympia for some bill signings, which was fun to see that. But I think, Ms. Coleman, do you have any news for us?
No, but I did think of something for DWR. I know that we're talking about Planners Day, and you need somebody to
We
run.
can't go back.
Yeah, I'm going back.
Okay.
Run the pet parade, and I will bring that up at the next DWR meeting for them to run that pet parade for you. And I was just thinking about that.
Okay, thank you. Have we heard anything about our legislative allotment?
If we're talking about for RCO or
Yes.
for Exit 21, no.
Okay, got it. And Exit 21 is still probably, what, 2 months out? June. Oh, okay, June. And that would be federal government dollars in the amount of about 22 million, in addition to what we've already received from the county and from the COG, and from some from the state as well. As time goes on, the price just keeps going up. But we're hopeful this time. This is our third application process for this through the feds, and I just sent an email off last week asking for the Congresswoman to come down and take a tour so she could see how important it was, and I also mentioned the landslide and how imperative it is that we get some action down here. So she was supposed to come for a visit at the end of this month, and I think I'm being pushed to early June. So we'll see if we can get her here sooner than that.
Just make sure it's in the afternoon.
In the afternoon, yes. Maybe around the 3 o'clock hour over Exit 22 to show the impact there, and then I would say probably about 2 o'clock on at Exit 21 until 6-ish. Yeah. And then also over on this side of town, over on Lewis River Road. In summertime, yes. I've got all the stops. I've got all the stops already planned, so, and the timeline. I think that was discussed in our meeting as well when we invited her, was bring her in the afternoon. Don't let her come in the morning.
Make
Yeah.
sure your air conditioners broke that day.
Yes, absolutely. So we're working on that. We're waiting to hear from the RCO grant, which is for state allocation for Scott Hill Park and potential turf fields up there. So we don't have an answer on that yet. So more to come on that. Council Wahkiakum Council of Governments. I attended that meeting on Thursday last week. It was an executive board meeting. We talked about transportation. We talked about some changes in office hours at the COG itself, which doesn't really impact Woodland all that much because they still have folks working from home. But the biggest thing was the transportation. So the IWOW project, if anyone's familiar with IWOW, the Industrial Way and Oregon Way project up near the 433 bridge that goes over to Renair up in Longview, the funding has been pulled for that and sent to another city here in Washington with the name of Aberdeen. So it was discussed that it would have been nice to keep some of those dollars in Cowlitz County, maybe take some of them, but leave an allotment here. But that, I don't know if that will happen. But Woodland was brought up in that conversation, and more planning, regional transportation plan needs to be discussed. So as we move forward with our memorandum of understanding with the county, that will be part of that discussion as well, of what does that look like inside the city and outside the city for transportation needs and issues. So more to come from that one. Moving on to, oh,
Did
yes.
you say you send me the information?
Yes, I will. Okay. I'll send it out to everybody.
Okay.
Moving on to myself, I was going to bring up the jobs. You already did that. Very exciting. Ran into somebody in City Hall today who is not transplanting, relocating their business into downtown Woodland, which brings about 30 jobs into downtown, which I'm very excited about. It's not a for sure thing yet, but it could be. But I think we're right there. I think the fact that I stopped and talked to him and told him that we were very excited to have him there, hopefully tipped him over the scales. So moving from Oregon into Washington, the business owner is a Woodland resident, so the commute would only be a few minutes for that individual and that business now. So it's a good business, 30 jobs in downtown. I'm excited about it. Really bring our area alive down there once again. So that's very, very exciting. Planning Commission and Council joint meeting May 13th, 9 to noon. At noon, I'm going to take over with a lunch discussion and then move into a small workshop to discuss a few things, such one of them being council rules. And going over the council rules, especially when it comes to citizen communication for items that are here on our agenda. I think that it's time that we start to make a change on how we approach our agenda with the community and allow them more opportunity to speak to items that are on here at different moments and just not at the beginning of a meeting. As I responded to Mrs. Butler, you say something now and then the action item comes forward in 3 months and you might have forgotten what she had to say. So we're gonna have a discussion on the 13th about what that looks like, and we're reworking that to allow more citizen engagement with council and provide additional comments at the time that is probably a little bit more appropriate than just at the beginning of a meeting and then moving on and dismissing the rest of them. So making sure that we have full engagement here with the folks that are here in our gallery and online. Hotel opening happened up at the casino last Monday. The chief and Miss Coleman attended for me. So thank you very much for doing that. I was disappointed because Miss Coleman informed me that there were snacks at the new restaurant at the top of the hotel, and in my day job, we're all about the food and the snacks. So I was very disappointed I didn't get to try out the free food. It's what we're all about. FERL party on Saturday was great. They are going to have a groundbreaking ceremony during Planters Days. I think it's on that Saturday.
Yes.
So the library is happening, and last I heard about a week ago, they're about $1 million away from a full build out, which sounds like a lot, but when you look at the overall total package of what it's going to cost, it's very small in nature, and they're just right there to tip that project right over the edge and get that built. So they're going to get going with that. And then attended Rotary today. Thank you for stepping in for Miss Asha. You did great, by the way. 2 new members coming into Rotary, which is good. And don't forget the Rotary golf tournament is coming up.
3 members.
Oh, 3 members. You're right.
Yes.
3 members. Sorry, I counted the 1. The husband and wife is a 1,
Yeah.
but that's a 2. Rotary golf tournament is the 23rd.
June 23rd.
June 23rd. So if you'd like to put a team together, go ahead and do that. It's up at Lewis River Golf Course. I already talked about the cog. And already talked about the planning, and I will stop talking there. Mr. Boyce is out today, but this Thursday, Mr. Goddard will be hosting an open house for the comp plan at 6 p.m. for the comp plan update at 6 p.m. here, Mr. Goddard, correct? And then our regular meeting on the 15th, and a planning commission meeting on the 18th of May. Also, there was something else on the 18th of May.
Yeah, it does seem like something.
What was happening on the 18th of May? It'll come to me in the middle of the night. I'll call everyone.
After hours.
Chamber after hours.
Hours,
Thank you.
yes.
And that is going to be up at Scott Hill Park. Nailed it. Scott Hill Park Chamber after hours, May 18th. Up at the park, come and see what they've done. They've got a great project up there. Restrooms are in, storage facility is in, gazebo's in, paved path is in, multi-use field is in. It looks amazing. So come take a peek on the 18th from 4 to 7.
4 to 7.
Gosh, I'm on my game tonight. Okay. And with that, I'm going to, Mr. Randolph, anything? Okay. Mrs. Hogan, do you have anything? Chief Kelly.
As promised, so what's going on with your police department is this year we began pursuit for accreditation through WASC. That's it's kind of a long, heavy lift for us, but the lieutenant's doing a great job, and we anticipate completing it and getting our certification in the spring of '24. We continue to represent the department at monthly Safe Kids meetings through Mrs. Connor. She also does the car seat clinics, represents us at the car seat clinics. She's a car seat tech, been so for I don't know how many years, a lot of years now. She also represented the department and the county at the State Lifesavers Conference up north. The lieutenant is doing a fantastic job with the wellness program and setting up, got a wellness app that all your police officers have on their phones. And those are also available to retirees from your department as well as family members. So we have all that going on. Your department also got invited again to teach at the high school for the AP government class. Lieutenant Ortiz, Detective Casey, and myself went over and did that. We also did our police day at the co-op preschool. Sergeant Keller does a great job setting that up, and of course, nobody cares about the police officers unless we bring the dog. So Bolo made his appearance there. And you know, speaking of Bolo, the lieutenant has received several requests for her to bring Bolo. He's been to Richfield PD, Richfield Elementary School, Columbia Elementary, North Fork Elementary, the middle school, as well as the high school. So nobody can get enough of that dog. And if you want to check my office, there's a bunch of hair, so you can just walk through and collect that. We also issue rollies for everybody in uniform so that they can leave a little bit clean when they're hanging out with the dog. The field training is going great. I told you that we have 2 officers that are I think they're coming up on the end of phase 1 in their field training, and they're progressing very well. We completed the firearms training with the new rifles. We've also began the UAV training, got started. One officer went to a 2-day class, and the other officer has yet to go. And then once that training is completed, we'll be looking at getting the UAV so that we can actually start that. And the lieutenant is also running that program since she is a card-carrying member and a pilot already, certified pilot. We participated in career exploration and job fair at the Woodland High School. We had a handful of members of your department there. We contributed to Make a Difference Day, which was a lot of fun. Sergeant Gibbs also set up a reading day during Dr. Seuss Day at Columbia Elementary, so we had a few of your police officers there as well. We continue to work closely with Tribal PD, and we found that out with the recent slide that they offered their lots for big trucks so that we could get them off the highway and maybe try to make an impact on the bottleneck that we had here in Woodland during that slide. And we're working on a resolution to that in the future. But the good thing is we were able to establish communication right away with all the stakeholders that are involved in a critical incident like that. We continue to be active in the chamber. We strengthen our partnership with ALNA with several, and I told you about the several requests for Bolo's appearance. He's been at multiple police agencies. He's been at the comm center a couple of times, and of course around here, very active in the community as well. And on a good note, we received our gold award from Lexipol for the 3rd year straight. Our department has. And that has to do a lot with our policies and training bulletins. Officers are responsible to take training bulletins monthly. So we're at 100%. So our policies are updated continually, and our training bulletins are completed on a timely manner, which gives us a gold award. And if you want to take a look at them, they're right here in the vestibule, where you can see all 3 gold awards that your department has received. So.
Nice job, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Smith.
Cycling all the way back to the beginning.
Okay.
What is the certification, accreditation? Can you walk through what that means?
Yeah, and it has mainly to do with accountability for your department. So they'll go through all of our policies, they'll go through our security measures, CJIS compliance, which is criminal justice compliance that we have. So all of the folks that are in here that have taken that test every 2 years to be compliant so that they can go in and out of the PD without an escort, that's a certification that they look at. They'll look at our evidence security system. They'll look at officer certifications. They'll look at probably a little bit of our budget. But this accreditation will give us an opportunity to apply for grants, because a lot of the grants that we look at or that we're looking at for school resource officer and other criminal justice grants that are available, they require, or we're encouraged to have that accreditation. So that's one of the main reasons. Plus, it also gives us a little credibility when it comes to how we do things in the city of Woodland, or how we do things in the department. And there's a lot of agencies that are pursuing accreditation and have been for the last couple of years. Some of them we'll see at the fall conference that will be receiving their, or the spring conference, I'm sorry, the spring conference that will be receiving their accreditation. So it's about a year process. We've already taken steps to acquire programs for the computer that will help us out for showing our proofs to the accreditation managers and the auditors that come in and look at that. So it's about a once we start really pulling the trigger on it, it's about a 6-month process when they'll be down here, and it's I can't remember the cost of it, but it's going to cost us a little bit, but it gives us the opportunity to be open and transparent in our policies and procedures and how we do business for the citizens of Woodland.
And if it helps with the school resource officer, we've had conversations. I am
Yes, sir.
100% for that. I'm sure if the school levy doesn't pass, which it looks like it doesn't, I'm sure that's going to put a big wrinkle in that.
Yes, sir.
So.
Any other questions for the chief? Thank you, Chief.
Thanks for your time.
Appreciate it. And Mr. Goddard.
Thank you. So just some quick updates. One is we had RFQs, requests for qualifications, for both the building official and hearings examiner. Those closed on April 27th, so we'll be taking a look at the applications and doing interviews with those probably in May. They both of our existing contracts don't expire till the end of the year, so we're not in a big hurry on that. We're ahead of the curve. The Lewis River Apartment Project, the open record for all new comments was due at the last Tuesday, and so there is a final comment deadline. I believe it's tomorrow, and then the applicant will have final rebuttal in the next week after that. And so we should be getting a decision from the hearings examiner probably within 3 to 4 weeks. So keep an eye out for that. Also, the Cardai Hill surface mining overlay, the environmental impact statement scoping comments were due last week, so that period is closed. We got confirmation from Clark County that all of our comments are in the record, and I added one additional area of concern, but that is essentially the point where Clark County's at. So it should be up to the applicant to start doing the additional studies, and so that may take them anywhere from a couple months to potentially up to a year, but I'll keep you updated on that as I hear more. Part of the reason why that came up is we did have a neighborhood association meeting from, I believe it's the North Fork Neighborhood Association, met here in this room, and they don't have another meeting scheduled, but they appreciated the city paying attention to this, and we had the Clark County Commission member attended the meeting, and another one on the phone listening to it by Zoom. So the county is paying attention to what the city of Woodland and the locals are concerned about. Also, I needed to do a correction or apology for something that happened on April 3rd. So on April 3rd, the council agenda item E was about, it was a public works action item to inform you about the ADA transition plan, and that Public Works was shifting some professional services funds to perform an ADA transition plan to get that study done by, I believe it's Gibson Olson. And the agenda item, or the agenda report, misstated that an ADA transition plan had been pulled 5 times, and that staff had considered, so I need to clarify that the city has not produced 5 transition plans that had been rejected by the council. What staff had meant to say is that staff had considered funding for the plan for 5 years in a row, and that it had not been funded either due to workload or budgeting issues. And the agenda item, or the agenda report from that April 3rd item, if you read through that fully, what you would see is that it was about writing an ADA plan, not necessarily the council rejecting an ADA plan for 5 consecutive years. And so there was a public records request for those 5 ADA plans that had been rejected, and that was a miscommunication by staff, and we apologize for that if there were members of the public who believed that we had produced 5 plans and that they were rejected by council and that we were keeping those plans from the public. That is not the fact. It was about funding a plan to be written, and so we apologize for any confusion on that.
Thank you, Mr. Goddard. I think it's important to remember that since coming into office in 2016, my office has delivered a balanced budget to this council 7 times now, with an 8th one coming. I will assure you that that one will be balanced as well. And I think that some of the confusion here was that that was something that we caught on our side, saying we would like to do it, but we don't have the funding in place to do that, and we did not put that burden on council to decide to fund or not fund that project. So I think it's important to remember that previous administrations would show up with a balance that was out of whack by $500,000 and ask council to go through and fix it and find the programs that you felt necessary. At this time, we're advising you of what we know we can and cannot do, and then with a little bit extra for discussion for council. So thank you, Mr. Goddard. Questions for Mr. Goddard? All right, thank you. And Ms. Coleman, do you have anything else?
I just wanted to say that for the 3rd year in a row, the wastewater treatment plant received an outstanding performance award. Again, this is the third year in a row, and it was received from the Department of Ecology.
Thank you. Again, another department that was in shambles when we came in. So thank you for the employees' hard work down there and making sure that we got our accreditation back and our certification. And make sure I don't use the wrong word. What is it, an accreditation or certification?
Well, we've always been accredited.
Okay.
And we've always had certified operators,
Yes.
but we were in dire needs of some modifications and making sure that we stayed on task so we weren't in trouble with OSHA. And
Gotcha.
so that is no longer a problem.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Appreciate all the hard work down there. And just a couple more comments before we move on to consent items. Last week was very busy and I missed a few things so the high school, I attended a high school debate in their government class. It was their championship, which was amazing. I hope to be able to do that again next year. And last week was Administrative Professionals Day last Wednesday, and we attended lunch to the executive team that was here in town and available. We went to lunch with our admin professionals to tell them thank you for everything they've done. And biggest thing is we planted a few trees down in Horseshoe Lake Park on the Clark County side. The princesses were there. Mr. Belial was there for Arbor Day. So we had a nice little celebration down there. So very busy on those nice days last week. And with that, we have come to consent items.
Motion to approve consent items.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Smith, second by Councilmember Rounds. Mrs. Hogan.
Councilmember Holland,
I have a question. I don't know whether or not I'm allowed to
Go
vote
ahead.
on this.
Yeah, go ahead.
So there's an attachment here, and I noticed, this, whatever this is. This,
Okay. Oh, the graphs and things?
this right
From-
here, this,
Okay, yeah.
this is my customer.
Oh, okay.
So,
Great question, Mr. Randolph. And that has to do with water rates? Is that
this
water?
company, I didn't,
Looked like the water
I
rate
just
study?
do garments for them, but I don't know, here, let me
I guess the question on the floor would be, can Mrs. Holland cast a vote on approving this voucher?
I just noticed their logo, but I don't know what this pertains to, because it comes right after my, so here, this was with an actions paperwork, and then this comes up after it is attachments to the agenda, so
I'm not following this, I'm sorry.
but whatever this is in last week's agenda, or the minutes, the last,
Utility rate?
the minutes.
Okay.
But this looks like it was put together by one of my real life customers, cause as I'm scrolling, I'm like, I know that logo because I do stuff for them, but, so my question is,
So, I mean, so it's a financial relationship that you have?
no, I perform a tag, like they buy garments from me and I slap their logo on it.
They pay you for it, though.
Correct.
Yeah, so there's
Yes.
some financial benefit.
Right. I thought they were contractors. I had no idea they're a financial service.
Gotcha.
I mean, if you have a financial tie there, the safe thing to do is to abstain from voting.
Abstain from voting on
Yes.
this. Okay, perfect. That was my question. I didn't wanna be a pain, but it came
Yep.
really quick as I was scrolling.
We've had that in
So-
the past with other council members.
So, I will
Okay.
abstain from voting.
All right. Ms. Hogan, will you please take the roll on the consent items?
Councilmember Dowdy,
Aye.
Councilmember Hall,
Aye.
Councilmember Alderman,
Aye.
Councilmember Burke,
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Still need to cast for Mrs. Holland.
Ab-
Oh,
I
yeah.
called her
you
first,
did?
but yeah.
Yes, I was first.
Oh, I didn't catch that part. You had already called her. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I
One
was
second.
abstaining.
Okay. I didn't realize we had started the vote when you asked the question.
Yes,
I
that
didn't
was.
catch that part.
That's why I'm saying it came quick. I thought I.
It did come quick. It did come quick. All right, so let the record reflect consent items have passed 6 yeas and 1 abstention. And with that, does council want to break before jumping into action items this evening?
Yes, please.
Yes. Okay. The time is 8:08. We will take a 7-minute break.
Recording in progress.
Why is that still there? All right. And where's, right there. Oh, there's Mr. Alderman. All right. All right. Moving on to the action item this evening. Action item C, Civic Center Engineering and Bid.
Make a motion to approve action item C, Civic Center Engineering and Bid.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Rounds, seconded by Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Rounds.
This goes out to bidding process, is that correct, Mrs. Coleman?
Yes, this is only approving the grant dollars to be able to do the design and get this out to bid, which the grant will pay for that. So we know how much money we're dealing with, and then we can proceed after that and decide which route we want to take.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Smith.
Pretty much answered my question.
Further discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Hogan, please take the roll on action item C, Civic Center Engineering and Bid.
Councilmember Dowdy?
Aye.
Councilmember Holland?
Aye.
Councilmember Hall?
Aye.
Councilmember Alderman?
Aye.
Councilmember Burke?
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Moving on to action item D, approve contract with Stericycle/Shred It for the next 2 years.
I move to approve action item D.
Second?
Moved by Councilmember Burke, seconded by Councilmember Rounds. Councilmember Burke.
After talking with Public Works, Public Safety, we'll be saving, $12
A month.
$12 a month.
12
so-
big ones a month.
And we can cancel at any time, so I recommend approval.
Councilmember Rounds.
I agree.
Further discussion? Seeing none, Mrs. Hogan, please take the roll on action item D, approve contract with Stericycle/Shred It for the next 2 years.
Councilmember Hall?
Aye.
Councilmember Alderman?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds?
Aye.
Councilmember Dowdy?
Aye.
Councilmember Holland?
Aye.
Councilmember Burke?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Moving on to action item E, Resolution 763, Recreational and Conservation Office, RCO, grant for Scott Hill Park Artificial Turf 22-1639.
Motion to approve action item E, resolution 763 for Recreational and Conservation Office RCO grant for Scott Hill Park.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Dowdy, second by Councilmember Burke. Councilmember Dowdy.
We need to approve this in order to qualify for the grant.
No, Councilmember Burke.
Aye, same thing.
Okay.
I agree.
Further discussion?
I have emailed specifically about this park. It looks like they're moving forward and trying to get a need for the Little League. Emails are still going around, so I'm still trying and I'm still hopeful.
Further discussion?
I would just add that the artificial turf is an outstanding idea for our climate, so I think that it's gonna be, if we get it funded, it'll be great.
All right, seeing nothing else, Mrs. Hogan, please take the roll on action item E, Resolution 763. Oh, before you take that, Ms. Coleman, do you have something? Sorry, I didn't see you.
Yes, just from the comments from council members, I just wanted to clarify that this is artificial turf for just one of the fields that it's up at Scott Hill Park and not all of the fields. So I just want to make sure you know it's just for one and not all.
Thank you, Ms. Coleman. Further discussion, Mr. Smith.
The sooner it opens, the better.
Thank you. Anything further? Seeing none, Ms. Hogan, please take the roll on action item E, Resolution 763.
Councilmember Dowdy?
Aye.
Councilmember Holland?
Aye.
Councilmember Hall?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Alderman?
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds?
I'm going to abstain because I'm with the Rotary Club, which is involved with Scott Hill Park.
Councilmember Burke?
Aye. Might need the swimming pool.
Ayes have it, 6 with 1 abstention.
Moving on to action item F.
can't do that.
Yeah, I did it.
Moving on to action item F, CAP 22-01 West Scott AC Water Main Improvements Contractor Selection, Odyssey Contracting LLC.
I'll make a motion to approve CAP 2201F, Westcott AC Water Main Improvements Contractor Selection, Odyssey Contracting LLC.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Rounds, seconded by Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Rounds.
Mrs. Coleman, would you step in there again and explain that for the body here?
This is in regards to the selection of Odyssey.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have selected the apparent lowest bidder, and as part of the selection process, we also had a line item that was in there for BABA, which is Build America Buy America, and we feel that by selecting the second option for BABA, that if we do have to go for financing in the future through USDA, that by doing this project and spending our utility funding wisely, that we could use this project as part of a down payment process for any loan if we wanted to submit it, and it's only a variance of $6,000, but it would mean that we would have close to $500,000 going towards a down payment portion if we were going to have USD funding in the future. So we think that it's a very good selection. The bids came in lower than we expected, and we think the additional $6,000 for the one line item is pennies in minuscule in comparison to what we would have to do if we had to come up with $500,000 to $1 million if we ever needed to fund another project. So we think it's a very good selection.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Smith.
No comment.
Further discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Hogan, will you please take the roll on action item F, CAP 22-01 Westcott AC Water Main Improvements Contractor Selection, Odyssey Contracting LLC.
Councilmember Dowdy,
Aye.
Councilmember Holland,
Aye.
Councilmember Burke,
Aye.
Councilmember Hall,
Aye.
Councilmember Alderman,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Moving on to action item G, request to authorize letter to oppose CABT's bill HR 471.
This is the one that I brought up that was,
Mr. Alderman, we need a motion on the floor first before discussion.
I make a motion that we take a look at this letter to see, make a decision if we want to get behind it or not.
Motion to approve it or
Motion to approve or.
discuss it?
You can make the motion to approve, and if they voted, I mean.
Okay,
it
make a
doesn't
motion
matter.
to approve the letter to send to our representative opposing, the bill.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Alderman, second by Councilmember Holling. Councilmember Alderman.
This is the one I brought, that I was approached by the Citizens Against Big Trucks. I see both sides of the argument. Ms. Johnson's comments this afternoon, I completely understand where she's coming from. In the pamphlet that I gave you has some more detailed information. The stopping distance is the safety issue of the longer trucks, more stopping distance, the weight. As far as, even I noticed downtown, our new project we just did on Lake Shore, I live right across coming off of Buckeye, and watching the white timber trucks come out with the truck and pup, if you get a chance, look at their tracks going over that brand new curb already. It's gonna tear it apart, and that's a short trailer. We get two 33-foot trucks coming in here, two 33-foot trailers coming in, they're really gonna start tearing our stuff apart. And the problem that I have the biggest issue with is there's no funding from the government to repair, for any repairs or any infrastructure repairs to this. That's my biggest, and along with the safety issue, that's my biggest issue. So I was approached by this group, and I told them I would bring it to the board and to see if you want to get behind it or not. So that's what I'm doing.
Thank you, Mr. Alderman. Councilmember Holland.
My concern would be exit 21. Like if anybody is sat there during rush hour and there's semi trucks in front of you, just a regular semi truck takes one light cycle to try and get around the corner. So I can't imagine if you had double coming through that intersection, what that would do, but that was just kind of my thoughts when this came up on our thing, was like, what would that look like at exit 21? But
Thank you. Mrs. Rounds.
I talked to Anders Johnson, Mrs. Johnson's son, and he explained that 233s would not be able to take the exit 21, which is a good thing for Woodland, actually. They'd have to go through the roundabout. So I don't have a problem with the 33-foot, and Oregon has they do 3 trailers in a row.
Right.
So I'm okay with the way it is. I probably will vote no for the letter.
Mr. Smith.
Yeah, I think Oregon allows triples. I don't think Washington allows
No, they
triples.
don't.
So, I mean, even if they do approve it, I think Washington's going to have its say on what they'll allow and what they won't allow. And if you get trucks that are too long, I think Washington might have an issue with it. So, I don't really think the letter's needed, in my opinion. And I think we need more info of exactly what we're denying fully. I feel like we're not really getting all the info and saying no to something that I don't really have a good grasp of.
Further discussion?
I agree. Also, I'd just like to point out,
Go, sorry.
okay, I'd like to point out on the last page, there was nothing complete.
the letter.
The letter on the recommendation she was making, because it's not complete.
That, when I explained that to you, that was a thing from my printer. I was printing it out and didn't finish printing it out.
Okay, but that's all we got.
So, like I said, either way, I told them I'd bring it forward, and if you guys want to get behind it, great, and write a letter to our representative. If not, that's great too.
Mrs. Dowding.
Well, and I think Ms. Johnson also brought up some good points, that I don't think we want anything that's gonna stop some of the businesses we're trying to bring to our town, from coming because of the trucks we're trying to stop from being able to supply those companies. So I think in the long run, we'd be hurting our own selves. So.
And, yeah, and
Mr. Hall?
I would agree with Councilman Dowdy also on that, not that subject alone, but also the fact that, like Mrs. Johnson pointed out, those exits can be corrected. You can correct the roundabout. We can fix that, but we can't fix it if we tell the trucks, no, you can't come in here. We gotta have the business. And, somebody that's in the business is giving us advice here that I think is pretty sound. I think we need to say nay to this.
Do we have weight limits on what can go through town? Like, I know in Longview, when you go to Longview exit, it'll say trucks go.
We have truck routes in town.
Yeah, to take Third Avenue, so that but that's what I wondered here.
We have
What's the weight
excuse
limit?
me, there is truck routes in town to go downtown.
Yeah, it cuts over, by St. Phillips.
Fifth Street, isn't that Fifth Street?
Yeah.
Bozard.
Bozard.
Bozard Fifth. Chief, are you aware of any other streets in town or roadways in town that are weight restricted at this time inside the city limits?
No.
Okay.
I know when we were on the council before, it used to be 10,000 pounds rated. Used to be, but I don't know what it is now. It's changed.
Anything further on action item G? Seeing none, Ms. Hogan, please take the roll on action item D. Request to authorize letter to oppose CABT's/Bill HR 471.
Councilmember Burke.
No.
Councilmember Rounds.
No.
Councilmember Smith.
No.
Councilmember Holland.
No.
Councilmember Dowdy.
No.
Councilmember Hall.
No.
Councilmember Alderman.
No.
The noes have it. Moving on to action item H, West Scott AC Waterline Replacement Project, Construction Management Agreement with Gray and Osborne.
I make a
Motion.
mo- Go ahead.
Motion to approve action item H. Oh, yes.
Yep, we're on H.
H, West Scott AC Waterline Replacement Project Construction Management Agreement with Gray and Osborne.
I'll second.
Moved by Councilmember Dowdy, second by Councilmember Rounds. Councilmember Dowdy.
As we discussed with Ms. Coleman today, we recommended do pass.
Mrs. Rounds.
I agree.
Further discussion? Mr. Smith.
Looks like it's under budget from what you proposed. Looks like it's about half the budget.
This is for the, yes, for the construction management, and this is for West Scott Avenue, not Lift Station 8, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
This is your BABA plan.
Yes.
BABA.
Yes,
love
so it all came in under budget, and that's how we were gonna pay for some other things that I brought up in the past.
Okay.
Yes.
Further? Seeing none, Ms. Hogan, please take the roll on action item H, West Scott AC Waterline Replacement Project, Construction Management Agreement with Gray and Osborne.
Councilmember Burke,
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Holland,
Aye.
Councilmember Dowdy,
Aye.
Councilmember Hall,
Aye.
Councilmember Alderman.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Moving on to action item I, Lift Station Number 8 Construction Management Services by Gray and Osborne.
Motion to approve action item I, lift station number 8, construction management services by Gray and Osborne.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Dowdy, second by Councilmember Rounds. Councilmember Dowdy.
This is another recommended do pass, and it also is coming in under budget.
Councilmember Rounds.
No comment.
Further discussion?
I think
Oh, Mr. Smith, sorry.
I think lift stations are pretty important, so I don't think we have a I don't think we have much of a choice. So, thank you.
Anything further? Seeing nothing, Mrs. Hogan, please take the roll on action item I, Lift Station Number 8 Construction Management Services by Gray and Osborne.
Councilmember Holland,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds,
Aye.
Councilmember Dowdy,
Aye.
Councilmember Burke,
Aye.
Councilmember Alderman,
Aye.
Councilmember Hall.
Aye.
The ayes have it. The time is now 8:33. We are moving into a workshop regarding climate resiliency. Mr. Goddard.
Good evening. The packet you have before you is a draft recommendation from the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission has been working on a climate resilience pilot project with the Department of Commerce. And part of that project was some consultant work by some consultants. And they went through the various city plans and documents to determine whether or not a small city like the city of Woodland had adequate information or policies in regards to climate resilience. And we had brought this to you before just so you had previous workshop to look at it. The Planning Commission did a workshop and a council, and we held an open house. Unfortunately, we only had one person show up for the open house, and that was, of course, a council member. But the Planning Commission essentially, at their last meeting, I believe it was April 18th, went through each of the proposed policies and goals item by item to determine whether or not they felt it was relevant to the city of Woodland, and it makes sense for us to add that to our comprehensive plan as we go through our revisit this year. And if you're interested, that video is available on the website, as is the previous presentation by the consultants and the staff. So we've had a couple hearings on this. This is not on your item today for actually taking any action on. The Planning Commission specifically said they debated whether or not they wanted to go through this effort to look at all the chapters and to save it all up and dump it on you in a single recommendation. But they instead opted, based upon a quick consultation with Councilmember Hall, who was in the audience, and both, or the Planning Commission essentially felt that it makes sense for, as they kind of make progress, for the recommendation to be brought to you so that you could see as they're making progress, take it in little small bites so that you have some time to look it over. So what you have before you is essentially a synopsis of what they recommended, and I made a quick photocopy because the projector's not working today. We don't have the laptop. I just printed the first page of that. So if you look at that, what this essentially tells you is there's a couple sections on that page. One is for agriculture, and the second one is for buildings and energy. The number in the left-hand column represents the slide number from the Planning Commission presentation. So if you're looking at this while you're listening to that video, you can follow along in the conversation. But essentially, for example, under the agriculture, there's 3 things that they're looking at here. One of them, item number 2, is a new policy. And then item number 3 is a new goal that they're recommending. And in this case, it's land use goal number 3 to support urban agriculture. And then the policy that goes with that urban agriculture is the idea that we will allow for small scale farms. Now, the consultant recommended that the city should support small scale urban farms, but the Planning Commission felt no, not just urban farms, the city should support small scale agricultural farms. So they took out the urban because both rural and urban farms should be supported. And then as you go down, for example, under the buildings and energy, there's a land use goal, number 5 on this page. It's a revision, it's not a new goal. And the existing goal says place utilities underground where possible. And the Planning Commission's recommendation is that it say implement development regulations to require new development to underground. So that kind of gives you an idea of how the conversation went. So this is before you tonight so that it's out in the public. Everybody gets the opportunity to read about it and think about it. It probably won't come to you for consideration for adoption till September, October, November, December. I don't know for sure. The last page of your handout is a Excel spreadsheet with the proposed calendar. So you can see in May or in April, the grayed out box, it's the completed, lets you know that they did the Parks and Rec and the climate resilience this month. They're going to talk introduction and vision chapter and the public involvement chapter. So everybody knows what's going to be talked about at the open house date and the Planning Commission date on the month. So if you have any questions, you can ask me tonight or anytime between now and November, December, when I think it'll be in front of you for adoption.
I would like to go back to how we got to where we are right now. If you could just, I guess, well, explain myself a little bit before you jump in. Is you brought this project to me and said the state has an opportunity to come in and do the work for us. And my first initial reaction was absolutely not, because it's going to put regulations on what we're trying to do, or developers are trying to do. But as our conversation continued, it was evident that the state's going to be pushing this stuff down to us at some point or another. And I brought this to council, or had to put this on Travis's work plan, so we can have our own discussion, our own plan, and not be forced to do something at the state level, because this is coming down. And those of you that attended the AWC City Action Days, it was all about climate. It was all about reducing emissions and everything else that I don't really want to get into. So as much as, and I'm looking to the back to one individual who keeps bringing this up, and I appreciate you keep bringing this up, because it wasn't, we're not trying to push an agenda, and we're not trying to do something to get on board with Olympia. We're trying to do what's right for Woodland, and not being forced to implement policies and procedures and those types of things I believe that this will be our roadmap, that they can't, if we can get ahead of this before we get the state pushing back on us, I think we'll be in a better position in doing it our way versus the state's way. Anyway, that's my opinion on this. Did I want to do it? No, but I think that it's important that we get ahead of it. And we didn't have to pay for it. So they're helping us, and I think that as time goes on, I think every city in Washington is going to be forced to do one of these plans. So my 2 cents. Travis, go ahead.
Thank you. So I do appreciate you putting that in context, because I know that some of the people that I've had conversations about this feel that I'm spending my time on things that don't necessarily benefit the city, or I could spend my time doing other things more wisely. But I think you've got it right. Another example is like our ADA discussion for the ADA transition plan. When we are talking about state and federal grants, there is a scoring method, and sometimes it literally could get down to we are tied with another community, and if another community has an ADA transition plan, or we have climate resilience goals, it gives us a better chance of getting funded than they do. Why would we not want to do that? If you go through this list and you take a look at this stuff and you feel any of this stuff doesn't reflect the community's values, you're more than welcome to take that off the list. This is the recommendation from the consultants, and whether or not you feel the consultants are environmental zealots, or whether you think they truly understand what they're talking about and it represents what the city should be advocating for, that's entirely up to you. I think what's important from my point of view is do I feel it reflects Woodland? And actually it does, and considering that the Planning Commission went through that, and whether they're environmental zealots or not, there's a lot of reasonable issues that I think do apply to Woodland. So you may not feel you're a environmental zealot, but if you think it's good for the city's point of view for us to get additional funding, or, another example is our emergency preparedness for the landslides that don't even occur in the city, whether that occurs once in a lifetime or once every 3 or 4 years, it makes sense for us to plan for it, because experience has shown within the last month, having people swing in and put up signs, and we have our neighbors to the north, La Center and Ridgefield and the tribe, they were actually closing their exits so that people couldn't get onto I-5 to come and become part of our parking lot. So it's a great example of why we're doing it may not be relevant, but whether or not you feel anything in here needs to be adjusted, that's entirely up to you. My job is to implement it.
So we'll start with Mr. Hall and work our way down.
Yeah, I got a couple of things. I was sick the day of the last open house, but I would have been there because that is the most important day. The community needs to understand the open house is the most important activity for every one of these things that we're going to look at all summer long. Every month, the first Thursday of every month, right here in this room, we're going to have an open house. That's when we can ask questions, raise concerns, talk about solutions. That's when things happen. After that open house, then we get into meetings and workshops and whatever, and there's not as much input. It's almost like after the fact at that point. I mean, there's still opportunity to visit about it, but I want to just impress on the public that first Thursday of every month, all summer long, is a workshop that's the opportunity, and it's a good event. Well, Mr. Smith went to the last one. There's all the agenda is laid out. There's lots of opportunity to interact on each thing. So make that a priority. That would be my first thing. Secondly, none of these things are how-to. None of these things tell us how to do anything. They're simply policy issues where we open the door to things we can do to develop our community. And we need to do that if we're going to use grant money, which is what we're going to do these things. And so we need these individual items put into our planning so that when we revise our growth management plan in the fall, we have those philosophies in place, not telling us how to do it, but giving us the opportunity to talk about it and to do it. And so my recommendation would be, I did come to the Planning Commission meetings that were on these subjects, and I think that they've talked about all that, and they've looked at these different items, and they're making a reasonable addition to our planning process. So I would say we need to do this. It's helpful to us as a community. It's not telling us, not dictating to us how we do it. So I think this much needs to happen. And everybody should be there on the first Thursday of every month, because that's when you get a chance to talk about it and really get into it. That's my take on it.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Mrs. Dowdy. You had your hand
Well,
up, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah, okay.
And so I know kind of what he said, but like when it talks about allowing for small scale farms, community gardens, that kind of stuff, like what does that look like? Like, is that for getting grants and things like that for us to use with the school districts or with a community garden? Like, what does that look like? Is kind of what I'm, big picture, I guess, or little picture.
Sure. The goals and the policies, I like to use the example of it's the North Star of where our community wants to go. Now, the regulations, the Woodland Municipal Code, it's the project by project review that implements that vision. So for example, the example that I had brought up is the question about undergrounding of utility lines. So the current policy says we would theoretically like them to be undergrounded. But the reality should be, or I guess I should be asking this question, is the reality that we want all of those overhead power lines eventually placed underground? Because the regulation could put them underground, but theoretically our vision doesn't say that we want them underground. It says it would be nice if they were underground. So the implementation, so if push comes to shove, if a developer said, no, I don't want to pay for that to be put underground, the taxpayer should pay for that. You know, if push comes to shove, could I force them to do it? I think the answer is yes, but if their argument is, well, the North Star of your comprehensive plan only says, yeah, when it's efficient or when it's financially viable, it opens me up for a lot of argument and discussion, and I have to convince them of stuff to do the right thing, as opposed to sometimes it's just easier to force them to do the right thing because it's what the community wants. So it's not, so I don't have a clear answer to you, because the actual forcing people to do stuff or getting stuff done is in the regulations.
So like, so for example, in number 5, when it says implement development regulations to require new development, that would be new development has to put them underground if they want to build.
Yes. So
Okay.
this is the policy that you want me to pursue that. Then I
Right.
add it to my work plan to change the regulations so that everybody has to put stuff underground.
So some are more vague than others.
Yes.
In this thing. Okay, that makes sense. Got it.
Yeah. And this in itself it puts more stuff on my list for the Planning Commission to recommend fixes, so that the council has the power to force people to do stuff. If that's what you feel is necessary, that's a whole nother step, and you can either jerk my leash at that point, or encourage me to move ahead.
And then one more question.
Yep.
Number 7, it says encourage design. Is it really supposed to say reachers?
Oh.
Is it supposed to say features?
Yes, thank you very
Okay,
much.
I just
That
want to
is
make sure I knew what it was trying to say.
design features, yes.
All right, thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Goddard? Are you looking for any direction from council this evening?
Nope.
Okay. When will we see this again, or when will this be discussed again with council?
So if we can keep to the work plan that is in there, we expect a public hearing to come to you by November, or sorry, probably December.
Okay. And is planning commission still working on, they're still working on these, right? Okay.
On the climate resilience stuff, they've made a recommendation. I guess I do want to add one more thing.
Okay.
We specifically had a conversation about, do we want to add a climate resilience chapter to our comprehensive plan? Or do we want to disperse these related issues in the comprehensive plan chapters where it was most applicable? And what you have in front of you was a recommendation to just incorporate the economic development goals in the economic development chapter and the transportation goals and policies in the transportation chapter. If you would prefer me to prepare a whole separate chapter for the comprehensive plan so that you can either vote it up or vote it down when you get to that stage, you just need to give me some direction so that I can prepare that for you. Right now, it's dispersed throughout the comprehensive plan.
Ms.
I kinda-
Feldman?
I just think it would be, just put it, to disperse them in the appropriate areas, instead of making a whole new chapter to the whole thing, just where it would make the most sense and where appropriate response.
Mrs. Hall?
So I would agree, but you would know what those are, so if you had to, you know, when you write a grant, and then they'll want you to show proof of your climate resiliency, fluffy word stuff, and you have to pull all those things out for your grant app, you would know where you stuck them, right?
The consultants recommend, and the state I think is going towards a climate resilience chapter. My recommendation to the planning commission was not to go that route. First of all, if this was a radical liberal democratic community and they want a climate change chapter, more power to them. I didn't feel it reflected Woodlands. I think it's, for us, it's more of a resilience issue than it is a climate change issue. So my recommendation was not to go that route because it creates unnecessary bait and switch, because that's not what this community is looking for out of this process.
But I think, like, that would be where I would go, just because we are dependent upon people in Olympia giving us money. And regardless of what anybody thinks about whoever is in charge of Olympia, we have to do what they require us to do to get that money. And so it's just kind of how the game is played. And I think most of us know how the game is played. Use a bunch of fluffy words that really mean nothing to make it sound like you're doing something. But that's kind of how I read through them. It just doesn't sound like we're doing much. We're just giving some fluffy words to things we're already doing, like supporting farms. Right? Okay. It's kind of what I got out of it, so.
Mrs. Rance?
I like it in the designated areas also. That would be my suggestion.
Mrs. Dowdy?
It may be more work, but is it possible to have like a pull-out climate resiliency cheat sheet that is kind of just like you have here, that would have like, for that purpose of writing grants and things like that, that says, here's all your climate resiliency by category, so that it doesn't have to be a chapter or something like that, but just for the quick
So,
purpose?
yes, so one of the tools that was developed by the consultants as part of the pilot project is that kind of documentation was in there, and they're using it as a model for other jurisdictions. But from our point of view, since we already got the product from that worksheet, I didn't necessarily include that to the Planning Commission because they had saw that in December. I can either go through that with you next time, or I could do another workshop to bring you up to date on that. But those kinds of tools are currently available, and they're the models that they're going to be using for the rest of the state. From my thinking, the reason why we volunteered for this project is so that all of the grant writers know that Woodland is good to go, because we're the model that all the other small conservative communities are going to follow, because we went through the effort and came out first.
I was thinking just like a note on the line items that are that, you know, just something that says, hey, this is a climate change, just a CR or something on there. I don't know how you notate it, but if there is something that somebody could track it down easily or not.
Sure. And I will also, now that I think about it, I should work on putting those up on our climate resilient pilot project city project page so that you can go through that information, because the state did prepare that stuff for us.
Did you have something else, Mr. Allen? Oh, okay, I thought you had.
Well,
Go ahead, Ms. Small.
I appreciate the planning committee's efforts in all of this. I don't think they get enough credit for what they do, but I appreciate all the work so that we don't have to. We don't have to do all of that. They get to do it for us and recommend how we should move forward.
This stuff is boring enough as it is. Imagine doing this in a 3-hour presentation.
Anything else for Mr. Goddard? Okay, thank you, Mr. Goddard. I appreciate it. And with that, it's 8:58. We are out of a workshop and come to the end of our meeting.
Make a motion to end the meeting.
Moved by Councilmember Round, second by Councilmember Burke. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The time is 8:58. Thank you, everyone, and drive safe.
Recording stopped.
Oh.
You know,